Well, hey there, guys. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to the channel for this installment of Open Mic, the show where the mic is open. The floor is yours. What do you guys want to talk about? That is what we are here to discuss here today. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. Good to have you guys here. And as the title suggests, it is Open Mic. We're going to be taking your questions for the majority of the show. If you have a question for me to address, as long as it's appropriate for me to address, go ahead and use the super chat feature and fire that on in. The super chats are still currently open. I'll leave them open for a little while longer. And then I'll let you know when I'm turning them off and we'll get through all the questions. Good to have you guys here today. Stanley Cup starts tonight, and for the first time in forever, a Canadian team, not the Toronto Maple Leafs, unfortunately, but at least a Canadian team, the Edmonton Oilers. Fanboy saying, hey, John, I'm listening on the drive to Edmonton. I hope you're going to go join some fans out there to watch a Canadian team play for the Stanley Cup. Yes, it's been a while. I can't wait for the Toronto Maple Leafs to get there, if that ever happens in my lifetime. But anyway, we're here. We're going to talk some movie stuff, and we're going to get to all your questions. But before we do, I'm going to do what I like to. I got a topic I'd like to bring up. You know, one of the biggest topics of conversation around movie fandom for many years has been the idea of, Marvel versus DC. I mean, clearly Marvel has always been not only in the lead, but well in the lead. And I say this as somebody who is a big fan of almost every DCEU film that came out. The only DCEU films that I did not like were Wonder Woman 1984 and Birds of Prey and the Fabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. Those are the only two DCEU films I did not like. I like to love all the rest of them. Some of them I totally love, like Man of Steel. Some of them I like, but I mean, at least all of them. But it's been indisputable that Marvel, for the longest time, has been well in the lead, right? Like by far in critic response, audience response, box office, just basically in every single metric, Marvel has been in the lead of DC. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be a bigger fan of DC than Marvel, of course. But I mean, like, I'm a bigger fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're my team. But I have to acknowledge that the Edmonton Oilers did better this year because they're playing in the Stanley Cup final. Doesn't change the fact that I'm more of a Toronto Maple Leafs guy. But, I can still acknowledge reality. And the reality is Edmonton just had a better year. So, with that said, we haven't talked a lot about Marvel and DC, lately at all because it just became such a laughable topic with Marvel being so in the lead. There was really nothing left to discuss. But somebody brought this up to me the other day that, John, considering where everything is at now, is Marvel, or DC, I should say, poised right now to overtake Marvel? Are they in a position right now where they can become the more preeminent, dominant comic book movie franchise in the world? And my first, reflex reaction was to go, don't be silly, of course not. But then I thought about it for a second. And you know what? They might be. They might be. Now think about this. Here's the reality of the situation. If you're watching a race where someone is like so clearly in the lead, right? So clearly out front, so clearly ahead. For there to be any chance for somebody running in second place to win that race, not one, but two things have to happen. Like, not just when one person's in the lead. I mean, one person's in the clear lead, like way ahead, laughably ahead. In this case, Marvel, laughably ahead. When you're watching a race and you see that kind of a lead, for there to be any chance for the person running in second place to actually win that race, not one, but two things have to happen. The first thing that has to happen is the person in second place needs to start doing better, right? They haven't run the race that they're capable of yet. They got to dig down. They got to throw it into another gear. They need to do better, right? So that one's obvious. First thing that needs to happen, the person running in second needs to dig down and start doing better. But when the lead is so big the person in second place just doing better isn't going to be enough, because a second thing needs to happen. And that second thing that needs to happen is the person that's way out in the lead has to start slowing down. Like, the only way they're going to catch them at this point, doing better isn't going to do it. They need that person that's so far ahead of them to start to falter. They need that person so far in the lead to maybe trip a little or slow down or run out of gas or start to have cramping or whatever. They need to start doing better themselves, but they also need, the second thing is that person way in the lead to start doing worse. And is that not the situation we're in right now? Are we not in that very situation at this moment? Look, even if you're a massive, massive Marvel fan, and I consider myself to be a big Marvel fan, but even if you're the most massive of Marvel fans and you think Marvel is still doing great, you have to acknowledge, I think all of us agree, I've said this many times, I think we would all agree that Marvel, even if you think they're still doing good, we all agree that they're not doing as good right now as they were in that 15 plus year run up from Iron Man to Endgame, right? I think we all agree with that. We all agree they're not quite firing on all cylinders like they were. Some people might be even more negative and say they're just flat out doing bad lately. I don't think they're doing bad. They've had several films make over $800 million lately. I mean, Thor: Love and Thunder made a ton of money. Doctor Strange 2 made almost $1 billion. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 made over $800 million. Yes, we had Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania barely make more than Black Adam. Yes, we had the Marvels do very badly. But I mean, they still got a lot of films that are doing well. But we can all agree they're not doing as well as they were. We can all agree on that, right? On that, we can agree. So that part is happening. The person way in the lead is starting to struggle, is slowing down. They're not maintaining the same breakneck pace that they were when the race began. And so they're coming back to the field a little bit. Marvel's slowing down a bit. Okay, so that is happening. Marvel, or DC now, if we flip over to DC, we're getting closer to seeing the results of them making a major fundamental change. They scrapped the car that wasn't working, the DCEU. John, how can you say that? You just said you liked all the DCU movies. I did. But you still can't deny reality. The reality was the DC films never lived up to their potential. They never got fully the audience on board. They never got the general audience fully on board. They certainly never got the critical community on board, and they certainly never enjoyed remotely the size of box office success that their Marvel counterparts did. So DC made the decision, instead of continuing to drive this car that isn't working right, the DCEU, and instead of just trying to change some tires or change the spark plugs or try a new kind of motor oil, they just said, look, the car just isn't going to get us to where we want to go. We can tinker with it all we want. We can try to make a few little minor changes here. We can tighten up the bolts. We can do all that kind of stuff. But at some point, we just got to acknowledge this car is not going to get us to where we want to go. This car is not going to win us the race. It's just not. So they made the decision, I think the right decision, to pull the plug on it, because they were getting worse and worse results. Look what happened to Blue Beetle. Look what happened to The Flash. Look what happened to Black Adam. All that kind of stuff. They were not getting the results, so they decided, they made the bold choice, pull the plug, put in a new captain in James Gunn and Peter Safran, and let's start this thing over from fresh. Let's start from scratch, brand new car, from the tailpipe to the hood ornament, brand new car. Let's get this thing going. And listen, with James Gunn running the thing, you've got a guy who has made a couple of great things for DC. From Suicide Squad, Peacemaker is the best thing DC's ever had on television, I think. I mean, obviously, look at what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy as well. He's going to do great things, and they're starting from scratch. So, we've got the leader starting to slow down a bit and come back to the pack, and we have the person trailing revving things up. I would suggest this. that DC right now is in a better position they've ever been in to actually get on par with Marvel. They're still not there. I mean, obviously, we got to wait for Superman to come out. And by the way, it's not just Superman. We're going to need to wait until the first 3 or 4 DC films come out. So we're still a couple of years away from really being able to gauge where things are. But they've never been in a better position than they are right now. Marvel's faltering a little bit. DC's revving up a brand new car. They got new people in charge. There's never been a better opportunity for DC now to throw it into another gear and actually catch up with Marvel. And it's going to take a little while. It's going to take a little while. Now, somebody just said in the live chat something that is a little bit laughable. Not that Rena or Rena is laughable. Just I think think about the comments. Rena is saying it's too late for DC. Really? Because I got about another 50 years of movies to watch. Too late for DC? No, it is not. That's like saying, you know what that's like saying, Raina? And I'm just poking you a little bit as my fellow film fan, right? We're just giving each other a hard time here. We're giving each other shit. So that's like saying to me, when Facebook was getting started and MySpace, any of you guys remember MySpace? Any of you guys old enough to remember MySpace? That's like saying when Facebook or Twitter were just getting started, them saying it's too late. MySpace is like dominating everything. Like MySpace is the social media network. It's established. I mean, this little Facebook thing or these other little social media things, they might get a little niche, but they're never going to overtake MySpace. Everybody's got their top 5 friends. Is that what it was on MySpace? You had your top 5 friends, or was it 6? I can't remember. You had your top 5 friends, right? Like that's how you know you meant something to somebody if you were in their top 5 friends list, right? To say that it's too late, for DC is like saying back when Apple was, just thinking about getting into the phone game. It's too late. There's already so many cell phones. There's smartphones out there. It's too late. Why launch a phone now, Apple? Look where we're at. It's never too late to change the game because things change quickly, right? It was just a couple of years ago that Marvel looked absolutely infallible, right? Just a couple of years ago, like when Endgame, I should say, was coming out. Marvel at that point looked totally indestructible and completely infallible. Well, since then, we had Secret Wars, or Secret Invasion, I should say. We had Moon Knight. We had Echo. We had a number of things that have fallen short. They no longer look infallible. Mega's saying Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel made over $1 billion. I wouldn't include Captain Marvel in that list, but they've shown they're infallible. It is not too late. It is not too late for for DC to get back in the race and maybe even take the lead. We might only be a few years away from that. I mean, there's a possibility that like 10 years from now, we could be looking back and going, do you remember when Marvel used to rule the comic book movie space? And it'll seem like ancient history because DC is so in control of it now, right? I'm not saying this was going to happen, but look what happened with Facebook and then with Twitter and Instagram. Like the guard changes, things happen. So we'll see. We'll see. Look, I am not sitting here telling you, I'm definitely not sitting here telling you that DC is going to overtake Marvel. I am simply saying the truth. They're in a better position for that to happen than they've ever been. With with Marvel faltering and DC getting a fresh start, It's about to become a whole new game. And here's the good news. Here's the good news for us fans. We win. We win. Regardless if DC starts making the better and more successful movies, whether Marvel kicks it back into gear and gets firing on all cylinders again, or they're both running neck and neck, or whatever, at the end of the day, we win. Because at the end of the day, as long as you're not one of these idiot, mindless corporate zombie slaves who's just like, I will only worship Marvel or I will only worship DC, as long as you're not one of those brainless zombies, as movie fans, as genre fans, we win. And hopefully, they start making some great content at the same time. Anyway, it's a very interesting time right now, my friends. It's a very, very interesting time. All right. With that all said and done, guys, let's now do what we are here to do, which is to go over and take your input, your comments, your questions. Let's get things going here. We're going to start off with Suthius, who writes, Star Wars names are very creative. Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration and the National Security Agency, OSHA NSA equals OSHA NSA. Yeah, somebody pointed that out to me the other day. Like, they were pointing out like the fact that she's putting out fires and blah, blah, blah. I didn't even think about that. And I thought, actually, you know what? That was pretty clever. That was pretty clever. All right. Next up, we got Jai CSC, who writes, one of two. For as much as I love the MCU, I am more of a DC person. I love the characters and source material, so DC still has untapped creative potential. But MCU box office, $30 billion. Every DC film since Batman 66, about $15 billion. Anything's possible, but I can't see a way for DC to surpass Marvel financially. Well, remember, at the end of the day, it's not about... DC doesn't need to make up that $15 billion. It's not about who was running ahead 10 years ago. The Los Angeles Lakers, Ann and I were watching the LA Lakers playing the Denver Nuggets in the playoffs just a little while ago. And in the third quarter, the Los Angeles Lakers were up by 20 points. Now, I know that may not mean a lot to some people who aren't sports fans, but that's a lot. That's a big lead in the third quarter. They were up by 20 in the third quarter, but that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is who's ahead when there's zeros on the clock. That's all that matters, is who's ahead when there's zeros on the clock. It doesn't matter to anybody today whether DC makes as much money as Marvel did 7 years ago, or that DC puts out films that's as good as Endgame and Infinity War and Civil War like 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. What we as fans care about is what's happening right now. Is DC putting out top-notch quality? Is DC catching up with Marvel and running neck and neck with Marvel, or maybe even surpassing Marvel right now as far as putting out a coherent cinematic universe, putting out excellent individual films, telling great stories, and then achieving success with the trifecta, with the box office, with the critics, and with the audience? Are they doing that right now? That's the only question that's going to matter to us as we move forward into the new DCU. So we'll see. We'll find out if they're able to do it or not. I think they've got the potential to do it. We'll just see if they actually do it. Thanks a lot for writing that in, Jai. Next up, we got Dwayne Fernandez, who writes, Hey, John, hope you're enjoying the Stormlight Archive books. They can be very daunting to get into at first because of the multiple characters, magic system, and world. Hashtag Bridge 4. I'll tell you what, Dwayne, I've already tapped out. I've tapped out. Now, I might try it again, this time, like maybe in my Kindle reader. I might actually try it again reading it, because I try to approach it. For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, the Stormlight Archive is a series of books. They're fantasy books, and they're very popular right now. And I had a bunch of my viewers tell me that I should really get on it and try them out. And so I bought the audiobook and I downloaded the audiobook. The plan was, because I do like a couple of miles every day on the treadmill. So I'm like, okay, I'll listen. And I'm always looking for stuff to watch or listen to on the treadmill. So I got the audiobook of it and I thought I'd give it a shot. And it's like it's very convoluted at first. Like it's a lot of random names being thrown at you and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, this does not feel like a smooth introduction to a book series. Like when you pick up The Hobbit, like just as an example, right? When you pick up The Hobbit, it gives you a smooth entry into the world of Middle Earth, right? A very smooth entry. You feel like you're being drawn into the world. I found with Stormlight Archive that it was very difficult to quickly get immersed because I was just, like, they're throwing so many random names and so many random things. And I was just like, after about 20 minutes, I kind of turned it off. Now, I think I will give it another chance at some point, but I think I'm going to download the book and actually read it as opposed to listening to it and see if it's a little more inviting to get into, because I've heard so many people say good things about it. So I really do want to give it a proper shot. All right. Next up. Where are we at? That was Daniel Fernandez, or Dwayne Fernandez, I should say. Next up, we got Matt with Pepsi, who writes, recently started watching the show The Rookie. I love that show, and I love it. What is your overall thoughts on the show, and are you looking forward to Nathan Fillion playing the Green Lantern? Thanks, and bring on the filthy. Well, the first thing to point out is that Nathan Fillion is not playing the Green Lantern. He's playing a Green Lantern. He's playing the Guy Gardner iteration of Green Lantern, who is a great character in and of itself, but he's not like one of the foundational Green Lanterns, at any rate. The Rookie's great. I mean, I first checked it out when it started because I'm a Nathan Fillion guy, right? Good Canadian kid. I'm a Nathan Fillion guy. I love watching this guy. I think he's infinitely entertaining to watch on camera. You can make an argument he often just kind of plays himself. I don't disagree. But when you got his kind of charm and charisma and personality, I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. And I like The Rookie very, very much. He's gone through some changes. The show itself has gone through some changes over the seasons, but I really like where they're at right now. I think the show's really good. I'm enjoying watching it, and they just had their season finale, I think. So looking forward to next season. All right. Next up. Thank you, Matt. Bright writes, DC becoming great will only make Marvel go harder. That's the idea. That's hopefully. Competition breeds innovation. Capitalism, baby. Marvel is now reaching out to folks like Peele. Well, Marvel has always tried to work with top-notch directors, and they've worked with some great directors. The challenge with getting big-name directors, though, to come in and work on a Marvel film is that they will not have the amount of control that they might be accustomed to having when they work on one of their other films. For example, Quentin Tarantino has absolute control over his films. But if he were to do a Marvel film, which he never would, but if he were to do a Marvel film, he would have a lot of creative say, but at the end of the day, Kevin Feige is going to be the person in charge that dictates what can and cannot happen in a movie, right? And that's the way it needs to work for Marvel, because they're trying to maintain and create a tight cinematic universe, and you simply cannot have a tight, interconnected cinematic universe if you have a bunch of random directors just doing their own things. It's impossible to make it feel cohesive. You have to have one guiding voice in charge of everything, and at Marvel, that's Kevin Feige. So that's why it's always been a little bit of a challenge, I think, for a lot of for comic book movie production companies to get like standalone big name directors to come in and do it, because those big name directors are probably going to want a little bit more creative control than what Marvel generally gives. And Marvel simply can't do that. So, but if they can get a Jordan Peele on board to direct something, I think that would be great. All right. Next up. Thank you, Bright. Another one from Bright, who writes, calling it now, Avengers 5 will be changed to Secret Wars Part 1. I'll tell you why it won't. I think this is why we're looking at Sean Levy with 60 characters. I don't think it is. Now, listen, obviously all the Avengers movies flow one to the other. But even Infinity War and Endgame were two completely different movies. I mean, they're literally separated by 5 years in movie time, right? Infinity War happened. It's its own self-contained movie and story. It has a beginning, middle, and end, and it ends with the bad guy winning. There you go. 5 years later, the next chapter starts. Now it's Endgame. Now it's about redemption and trying to get everybody back and all that kind of stuff. I think the reason why we definitely won't and again, I'm not claiming to have insider information. This is just me as a fan speculating, okay? I think the reason why we will not have them call it like Secret Wars Part 1 and Secret Wars Part 2 is, number one, and least importantly, they've always planned them as two separate movies. But number two, and this is important, naming your movies Part 1 and Part 2 is suicide marketing-wise. Like one of the things that I think the movie industry has taken away from lately from lessons is that they looked at, say, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Calling a movie Part 1 is a mistake. Now, I'm not saying, and nobody anywhere is saying, that the reason Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning underperformed was only because they called the movie Part 1, which probably turned some viewers off and going, oh, so it's not even the complete story? Like, we're going to go see this and it's just going to be like a cliffhanger ending? I'll wait for the second one to come out, right? But I'm not saying that's the only reason. Absolutely not. But what most people in the industry agree upon is that that probably had an effect. And as a matter of fact, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 recently changed its name. It's no longer called Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. The name of the movie is now officially Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, period. So with that, I think they're going to avoid that. Now, somebody brought this up. Mecha Goji brings up Harry Potter was the one that started with that Part 1. But the big difference, though, with the Harry Potter thing is that Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, by the way, that was the name of the final book, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a Potterhead. The name of the final book was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Am I right about that? Patrick is saying yes. Okay. Patrick, Kane Legion is saying yeah. Okay, so the difference with that situation is that there literally was a book called Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. And so you already had a single book. And if you're going to then break that book up into two parts, it makes more logical sense, and it makes sense to the audience that it's called Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Because to fans of the books, what are you going to do? If you have to break that book into two, you've literally named every movie in the Harry Potter franchise the name of the book. So unless you call Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2, you literally have to make up a new name that does not correspond to one of the books. So in that case, and by the way, the third Hunger Games film did that as well, right? I think it was the third Hunger Games book. They decided to split that into two movies. So they called it Hunger Games, the blah, 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 Part 1, and Hunger Games, the blah, 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 Part 2. I can't remember what the name of the third Hunger Games movie was. Anyway, so in that case, it made sense. And you logically had to call them Part 1 and Part 2 because you were literally taking an existing book and splitting into two things. Mockingjay. Thank you, Lori. Lori in the live chat is saying Mockingjay. So yeah, there was one book called Hunger Games Mockingjay, and they call it Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2. So that made sense. But in the situation of Avengers, that's not the case. So look, is it impossible that they come out and make it Hunger Games or make it Secret Wars Part 1 and Secret Wars Part 2? Not impossible. It could happen. But as a fan speculating, I don't think they will. I think they're going to avoid doing that, and they're going to give it two distinct titles. That's what I think at any rate. We'll find out. Anyway, thanks a lot for the question, man. Next up. That was Bright. Next up, we got Jai CSC again, who writes, also thinking about it, despite the untapped potential from DC movie-wise, making films consistent, critical, and audience acclaim is still a tall order. Listen, I say this all the time, right? I think we as movie fans get deceived. We trick ourselves, or we become deluded into thinking making a good movie is just easy. And listen, to be fair, Marvel kind of made it look easy for a long time. And because Marvel made it look so easy, I think we as fans, we started to take for granted what a Herculean feat it was for Kevin Feige to put out movie after movie after movie that scored the trifecta. Every movie they put out, like with a couple exceptions, you know, Iron Man 3, Thor, The Dark World. But for the most part, like out of their first 20 movies, they were all huge at the box office, huge with critics, huge with audiences. They were nailing it and knocking it out of the park every single time. So much so that we in the audience started thinking, oh, it's just easy because they're doing it every time. And we underestimated and started not to appreciate just how ridiculously incredible it was that they were doing that. And yeah, they've come back down to earth a little bit. I mean, that's fair to say. Lately, they've come back down to earth a little bit. So, you know, it is what it is. We have to understand just how difficult it is to make a great movie and really then appreciate it when they do, and then not judge too harshly when they fail to do it. Now, yes, every once in a while, you're going to get a Madam Web that comes out that defies belief of how bad it is. But if a movie comes out as bad, we shouldn't jump up and down the throats of the people who make it. It's like, look, they were trying to make a great movie, making great movies really hard. And okay, they weren't able to do it this time. And really need to start appreciating it when they do deliver. Anyway, all right. Next up, we got Joel Acevedo. I hope I'm saying that right, Joel. I'm probably not. Anyway, Joel writes, "Hey, John, went to see Bad Boys, 7 p.m. movie, didn't start until 7:45. Unacceptable. And they play the Nicole ad twice, so that was clearly at an AMC theater. Also, I made my fiance watch Moonfall. You're lucky she doesn't leave you. We almost broke up. I hope your mom is doing much better." Oh, thank you so much. My mom is doing much better. But you know, it's funny you bring that up because just today, somebody sent me an article from the UK at Sky News who did this big article on how long of a time gap there is between when a movie theater, and this is in the UK, saying when a movie starts to when it actually starts. And they did this big article on it. So I jumped over onto the community tab and I put up a poll. And maybe some of you guys saw it. I put up a poll asking this: as a paying customer at a movie theater, if you buy tickets to an advertised 7 p.m. movie, let me see if I can bring it up on here, to an advertised 7 p.m. movie, when do you consider it acceptable for the theater to start the movie? And you can't really see the results there. Let me bring it up on here. I said, if it advertised 7 p.m., 10% of the people said it should start, and I've got over 6,000 votes on this poll. I just put this up this morning. With over 6,300 people voting, 10% said 7 p.m. If they say 7 p.m., it should start at 7. 25% of the people said between 7 and 7:10 is acceptable. 52% said between 7:10 and 7:15 is acceptable. That drops all the way down to 11% saying started between 7:15 and 7:25 is acceptable. And only 2% of the people said that when movie theaters actually start the movie, 7:25 or later, only 2% said it's acceptable. I want to point something out. This is 87%. Now, granted, it's only 6,000 voters. But 87% of the movie viewers who responded to this poll, out of over 6,000 voters, 87% of them said over 15 minutes from when you said the movie starting is not acceptable. 7 p.m. is acceptable. 7 to 7:10 is acceptable. 7:10 to 7:15 is acceptable. But after that, only 13% of the responders said that's acceptable. I went to go see Bad Boys the other day. Movie's supposed to start, I think, at 4:30. Started at like 4:58. It was like a 28-minute difference between when it was supposed to start and when it actually started. That's 28 minutes. Only 2% said that's acceptable. What I want to point out, and I think, you know what, I think this week I'm going to make a dedicated video calling out individual movie theater chains and challenging them to respond. Now, I'm a little fucking nobody on YouTube. I got a tiny little insignificant channel. I doubt any of them will respond. But I think this week I'm going to put up a video dedicated to the issue of when you say movies are going to start and when they actually start, and what our polls are telling us that the movie going audience thinks is acceptable, and that you guys, you movie theaters are running more ads than the movie goers say is acceptable. And I'm going to challenge AMC, Regal, Cinemark, whoever. I'm going to try to list off like 10 movie theater chains, and I'm going to invite them to respond, to say, like, right, I want to give them a fair shot. Tell us why, when you know that moviegoers do not want 25, 30 minutes of ads, and you're trying desperately to get moviegoers to come back to your movie theaters now, why do you continue to do something that your customers think is unacceptable? That 87% of your customers says is unacceptable. Why do you continue to do it? And I'm going to see if any of those movie theater chains have the testicular fortitude to actually respond to me. Again, I'm a fucking nobody. They probably won't. And it won't be because they're gutless, although I think they are gutless. But it's probably going to be because why should we respond to that Canadian hack nobody who's doing a YouTube channel out of his garage? Why exactly do we, as a multi-million-dollar corporation, need to respond to that doughboy doing a YouTube videos from his garage? Why exactly do we need to respond to him? That's probably going to be their attitude, and I don't really blame them, but I'm still going to give them the opportunity. I'm going to give them the opportunity and see if they actually have the testicular fortitude to respond. We'll see. We'll see. All right. But yes, man, that's completely unacceptable. You tell me a movie starting at 7 and it's not free, I got to pay to be there, and I'm paying you $15 for a movie ticket to sit down. You do not have the goddamn right to then make me sit through 30 minutes of commercials. And you wonder why fewer people are coming to the movie theaters today. Wake the hell up. Anyway, not going to go into my regular rant. All right. Thanks for sharing your experience, Joel. Appreciate that. Connor Mullis sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Connor. Appreciate that, man. Thank you so much for supporting us on that level, dude. That's very generous of you. And Connor writes, John, did you see the new Deadpool 3 teaser? I don't think I have. There is a brief shot of probably Lady Deadpool. My girlfriend thinks it's Taylor Swift because it's a similar shot to the end of her Bad Blood music video. What do you think? Well, Bad Blood is like what? I mean, I don't know Taylor Swift's discography or anything, but isn't that like a 6 or 7 year old song? So because there's a shot that looks a little like a 6 or 7 year old music video that looks, I don't know. I mean, look, I think there is a good chance that Taylor Swift is in this movie. Cameo kind of thing. I don't think she's going to be a legitimate cast member. I think there's a very good chance Taylor Swift is in the video. We've talked about that a lot. But whether she's Lady Deadpool, I don't know. Charlie just brought up the very good point. Like, if there's going to be a Lady Deadpool, it's kind of got to be Blake Lively, right? It's got to be Blake Lively. By the way, can I just say this? I know I go on and on quite often about the fact that I am indeed a very big Ryan Reynolds fan. I've been a huge Ryan Reynolds fan before he ever, kind of became a sponsor of the channel through Mint Mobile and stuff like that. But good Canadian kid, love the guy. But can I just say, I have always adored Blake Lively. I've always adored Blake Lively. I think she's a terrific performer. I think she's like one of the great, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, like in her little film that she did with Anna Kendrick a couple of years ago, Anna Kendrick, Henry Golding, called A Simple Favor, is like, I think one of the most underappreciated films in the past 10 years. It's beautiful. I think she's great. I think she's absolutely wonderful. The fact that Ryan Reynolds was able to marry that girl is incredible. So yes, I completely agree with you. If you're going to have Lady Deadpool, in this movie, it would seem to make sense to me that you have Blake Lively kind of do it. I would think. So, yeah, anyway. All right, let's keep going. Next up, and again, Connor, thank you for supporting us on that level, and let's see who it is. And I'm going to go look for that. No, I did not see this new trailer. Thank you for putting that on my radar. I'm going to go see if I can find that. All right, next up. Richard K. writes, over under 30% that the Sith training May in The Acolyte is Plagueis. Listen, because of the timeline, right? They're saying this takes place 100 years before the rise of the Empire. And that happens, of course, in the prequels. So there has to be a chance that it's Plagueis. I wouldn't say that it's 60 or 70% chance, but I will say it's over 30. Like, I would put it in between 30 and 50%. So not likely, like I wouldn't put my money on it being Plagueis, but I'll say that the chances are somewhere between 30 and 50%. That would be my guess at any rate. All right. Next up, Richard K. also writes, also, one last theory. I don't know if it's been mentioned. I don't know if it's been mentioned, but after seeing the set pictures of Giancarlo Esposito, MCU character could be Whistler. We talked about the possibility of him being Whistler on the show. So we did discuss it. And listen, he would make a badass Whistler, right? Giancarlo Esposito would make a badass Whistler. However, it seems incredible. Knowing what we know, it seems almost impossible that he's Whistler. Number one, why would Whistler be introduced in a Captain America movie without Blade? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense in and of itself. Number two, Giancarlo Esposito said that, I'm going to be teased and then a series. I don't think we're getting a Whistler series. And we know we're not getting a Blade series because we're theoretically getting a Blade movie. So that seems very unlikely as well. So while he would make an incredible Whistler to a Mahershala Ali Blade, I think the circumstances kind of negate that possibility. Nothing's impossible, but it seems, at least, Richard, on the surface, very unlikely. All right, guys. With that down, we're going to turn off the super chats in just a moment here. So for those of you who still have a thought or a theory or question you want to fire in, you got about 1 minute left to fire them in, then I'm going to turn them off. And we're going to get to the rest of the questions here in just a second. But before we do, we're going to take a quick moment and thank a couple of sponsors of today's episode and the John Campea YouTube channel, our friends at Miracle Made and The Perfect Gene. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Miracle Made. Did you know that your temperature at night can have one of the greatest impacts on your sleep quality? If you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Inspired by NASA, Miracle Made uses silver-infused fabrics and makes temperature-regulating bedding so that you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. When they arrived at our house, my wife Ann loved the feel of them so much, she couldn't even wait for me to get home to put them on our bed. Miracle Made has self-cleaning. These sheets are infused with silver that prevents up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresh 3 times longer than other sheets. Miracle Sheets also have incredible comfort and quality. Miracle Sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. So go to TryMiracle, that's TryMiracle.com/Campea to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo code Campea at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you will get a full refund. So upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to TryMiracle.com/Campea and use the code Campea to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's TryMiracle.com/Campea to treat yourself. Hey guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, The Perfect Gene. Guys, are you tired of the rough and rigid jeans crushing your boys? Well, today's sponsor, The Perfect Gene, finally solved all of your denim difficulties. They make great looking, perfect fitting jeans that are as comfortable as sweatpants. The secret? A special denim fabric that is super soft and has the perfect amount of stretch so you can squat, do yoga, or just sit around all day without ever having to take them off. I'm going to admit I was a little bit skeptical because to me, jeans have always been jeans. They're practical, practical, but not always the most comfortable. But I'm telling you guys, it's not an exaggeration. Once I put on these jeans, the perfect jean redefined what jeans can be to me. They're the perfect fit, they stretch, they breathe, and again, they're just insanely comfortable. So guys, it's finally time to stop crushing your balls in uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectjean.nyc/Campea15. Our listeners get 15% off your first order plus free shipping, free returns and free exchanges when you use code Campea15 at checkout. Again, that's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc/Campea15 and use the code Campea15. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support the John Campea Show and tell them we sent you. And thank you to our friends at Miracle Made and The Perfect Jean for sponsoring this episode of Open Mic. All right, guys. With that down, let's get back over to the questions here, shall we? We're going to pick things up here with Benjamin, who writes, "Hey, John, huge fan, listen daily." Thank you so much, Benjamin. Appreciate that, man. Question: have you seen Sliders? If so, what did you think? Any chance it'll get revived someday? Wasn't there, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there like, I was going to say 5 years ago, but it might have still been back in like my AMC days. Wasn't there like some news for a while that they were going to try to do a Sliders reboot? Anyway, Sliders, that was the show with Jerry. Is it Jerry O'Connor? Is that his name? Help me out in the live chat, guys. Who is the name of the main guy? I want to say Jerry O'Connor, but I'm probably wrong about that. Who was the name of the guy that was the lead in Sliders? And was John Rhys Davies? O'Connell. Oh, Daniel's saying, not O'Connor, O'Connell. Jerry O'Connell was there. And was John Rhys Davies in that? Gimli, the dwarf in Lord of the Rings, and Sala in Indiana Jones? Was he not in that as well? I thought he was. I could be wrong. And George is saying, yes, John Rhys Davies. Okay, so I saw some of it. I mean, this is, oh God, how long ago was that show out? But I never watched it regularly. I think I saw a couple of episodes. I never watched it regularly at all. So I don't really know. But yeah, it seems like any kind of a sci-fi concept like that seems like it could be ripe for a revival. And like I said, I thought I remembered like 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago that there was talk of it happening, but obviously it never came to fruition. So listen, right now, IP is king. All the streamers, all the studios are looking for IP that they can gold mine, and that might be one that they could revisit someday. All right, thanks a lot for that, Benjamin. Next up, Tyler Knox writes, "Hey, John, if you were given only 4 movies to exist that already exists, erase every single movie except for 4, what would those 4 be?" I don't like these types of questions that you have to just create a list off the top of your head. So whatever answer I give right now, I do not commit to it. Like if somebody asked me the same question again from here now, I might give 4 others. Okay. So off the top of my head, it would be, and I'm going to cheat a little bit here. Number 1 is obviously Star Wars. And when I say Star Wars, I consider Star Wars to be New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. That to me is just Star Wars. So it would be Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. I understand that's 3 movies as well, but to me, that's when I think Lord of the Rings, I think of Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, Return of the King. That's just kind of one thing to me. So it'd be Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Godfather, and Shawshank Redemption. Now, again, I withhold the right to change that answer, but yeah, I would say if I could only take a collection of 4 things, it would be Star Wars, in no particular order. Star Wars would be number 1, but Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Godfather, Shawshank Redemption. I think Shawshank Redemption is just simply one of the greatest cinematic achievements in the history of mankind. It's like one of the, it might be the greatest movie ever. At least it's in the conversation to me at any rate. So those would be the 4 things that I would bring. All right. Next up, we've got Logan Vaughn, who writes, "A lot of movie brands have been struggling lately. Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Pixar, Harry Potter, Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, etc." That's not true at all. And anyway, which studio / franchise / IP will get top tier excellent first? Well, I mean, first of all, Star Wars the last Star Wars movie that came out, as terrible as it was, still made over $1 billion. The last Jurassic Park movie that came out made over $1 billion. So I would not say that there's a number of the things you put on your list that, and by the way, with Marvel, I mean, let's not forget, while they are not doing as well as they had been doing, 3 of their last 5 films have made ridiculous money, right? Thor: Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange 2 almost just came within this close of cracking $1 billion, and Guardians of the Galaxy 3 all made over $800 million. That's pretty damn good. So look, as I go over them, Indiana Jones is done. So Indiana Jones is done. They might reboot it someday, but that franchise, for everything that it was, that's done. Marvel is, they're about to come out with Deadpool versus Wolverine, or Deadpool and Wolverine. That's going to be $1 billion film as long as the movie's good. So that's probably going to be $1 billion film. So that's there. Harry Potter. I don't know when we're getting another Harry Potter movie. I have no idea when we're, and here's the thing. I understand the wizarding world of Harry Potter. So the Newt Scamander, what was it? Fantastic Beasts. The Fantastic Beasts films are not really Harry Potter films. They're in the wizarding world, but, and in near the end of it, what's the name of the big old wizard? Not Gandalf. I forget. Who's the name of the main guy? Who's the name of the main guy? Who's the dean of Hogwarts? Anyway, so like you had him in it, Dumbledore. That's what it was. Thank you, Marcus. So you had Dumbledore, but really those weren't Harry Potter movies, right? None of the characters. And movies are their characters. So none of the characters, so I don't even really count that as Harry Potter. So I don't know that we're ever going to get another Harry Potter movie. Jurassic Park, like I said, the last one was $1 billion film, so it certainly isn't struggling. So look, I simply don't have faith that the Star Wars movie universe is going to get back to its days of glory under Kathleen Kennedy. She does not have, she is possibly the greatest producer in the history of Hollywood. Don't take my word for it. Steven Spielberg said that, and I think he knows better than you or I do. She's certainly amongst the greatest producers of all time, maybe the greatest producer of all time. But being a producer and being the head of a corporation are 2 different jobs, and she has simply not been able to do that job well. She's not been able to really get on the same page with the creatives. She's not been able to set out a clear roadmap for the direction of their overall Star Wars brand. She hasn't done all the main important things that you need to do. Now, several of the films that they've had have still been smash successes, and you got to give credit where credit is due. Absolutely. But I do not believe you're going to get it to that pinnacle of greatness that we want from Star Wars as long as Kathleen Kennedy is there. Again, I think Kathleen Kennedy is a first ballot Hall of Famer into the Hollywood Hall of Fame, if there was such a thing. She is a first ballot Hall of Famer. You escort her in, you put up the iron bust, and boom, she's there. But I don't think Star Wars can get there as long as she's the head of Lucasfilm. That's just that. Marvel could well be on their way back already, so we'll just see how that all goes. All right. Let's see. Next up. Although there's an interesting comment here. I got to disagree with you, Luis. Luis says Star Wars works best as an adult-oriented setting and content. Star Wars has never been that. That's just the truth. Star Wars has never been an adult-oriented setting and content. It's always been family-friendly. Not kid-centric, but family-friendly. That's what Star Wars has always been. Right? Now, I loved Andor when they skewed a little bit more adult, right? Like, that to me was the best Star Wars. That Andor to me is hands down the best Star Wars anything since the original trilogy. Right up there as well has to be Rogue One and stuff like that too. But yeah, Star Wars has has always had that identity of kind of being more open to everybody. So I wouldn't say that the answer is make it more adult. I don't think that's the answer. Make better content. That's the answer. Anyway. All right. Thanks for sharing your thoughts though, Luis. All right. Next up. We've got Alex Mata, who writes, just finished Bad Boys and loved it. I'm assuming you mean the new movie, Bad Boys, Ride or Die. Got to see them film on my block here in Miami. That's cool. A few months ago. Got to see my apartment make a cameo. Any movies you got to see film in your neighborhoods? Yeah. First of all, strangely enough, when my American friends ask me where I'm from, I mean, they know I'm from Canada, but when they ask me where I'm from, I generally tell people I'm from Toronto. Now, I'm not from Toronto. I mean, I lived in Toronto. I did live in Toronto for a number of years. And I'm going to see if I can bring this up here. I did live in Toronto for a number of years. I lived all around Southern Ontario for a number of years. But where I'm really from, what I really am, is a Hamilton kid. I'm from Hamilton. But I don't tell my American friends that I'm from Hamilton because they will have no idea where Hamilton is, right? They'll have no idea. So I'm going to see if I can show this. So there's Toronto, okay? Now you just drive a little bit down the road, then you get into Mississauga. Mississauga was where the Toronto airport is, by the way. Then you just drive a little bit further down, you get into Oakville. I lived in Oakville for a number of years. Oakville is a very wealthy place, but there's Oakville. Then you get down into Burlington, and then there's Hamilton. And Hamilton is where I'm from. That is my hometown. That is my city. Now, I bring that up because you would be surprised to find out just how many movies and TV shows actually shot in Hamilton. There's a lot of production happens in Hamilton. Now, the most prominent one as it relates to me is the Edward Norton Hulk film. That literally, like I had, like my apartment where I was living at the time, literally right in front of my apartment is where they shot the big street fight between Hulk and Abomination. That was on the streets in Hamilton. That was right there, right at my apartment. I am, of course, also in that movie, but anyway, it was right there, right in front of my apartment. That big street fight when, you know, Hulk picks up the car, rips it in half, and puts each half on his fists like they're boxing gloves. That all shot in Hamilton. Any of you guys watch the CW show Titans? A lot of that shot in Hamilton. What's the other one? There's another big superhero thing that's shot there, and I'm trying the Doom Patrol. A bunch of Doom Patrol shot in Hamilton. A lot of stuff shot in Hamilton, and it's always fun when you get to see like areas, you know, like there's always Toronto, right? They show Toronto all the time because Hamilton is the greatest city in the world. All right. I'm just going to say that straight up. Hamilton's the greatest city in the world. But taking my bias out of it, as far as major global metropolitan areas, Toronto is probably the best in the world. Toronto's probably the best city in the world. It's just, imagine New York without the filth and crime, and you have Toronto. Spoken like a Canadian. Just imagine New York, but without 6-foot tall piles of garbage everywhere, and without nearly as much crime, and you have Toronto. Welcome to Toronto, but Hamilton's the better city. Sorry, all my beloved Torontonian viewers, but Hamilton's better. Hamilton's always been better. All right, next up. Let's see. We've got, and by the way, that is awesome. Bad Boys was a really fun movie. I liked it a lot. All right, CM Walters writes, I think both will lose the race. I think people are burnt out with cinematic universes in general, and movies just need to be movies again. I disagree with you 100%. People are not burned out of cinematic universes. They're not. That's a fallacy. It's completely untrue. Any actual data disproves that. What people are tired of, and you guys who watch me on a regular basis, you know what I'm about to say. What people are tired of is mediocre movies. It's not a coincidence. I keep saying that people think it's like some wild, like really comic book movies have been going for 20 years. And for 20 years, every year as a movie blogger, podcaster, and eventually YouTuber, every freaking year I'm dealing with people saying, comic book movie fatigue's about to set in. Comic book movie fatigue's coming. Oh, now comic book movie fatigue is coming. Hey, listen, I know I said for the last 6 years that comic book movie fatigue was coming, but now it's coming. Like for 20 years that's happened and it never did. And people think it's some wild coincidence that once the Marvel Cinematic Universe started to decline in quality, the box office started to lessen as well. And they think that's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence that when quality started to drop, that's when the box office returns started to drop too. Total coincidence. No, it's not. To quote Vision, it is causality. People are not tired of cinematic universe movies. There is no such thing as comic book movie fatigue. What there is mediocrity fatigue. What there is mediocre movie fatigue. But then suddenly when a movie like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 comes out, that's great and wonderful, and people love that universe, and the movie is really top quality, boom, makes over $800 million at the box office. It's not a coincidence. It's not. And I'm telling you, the moment that Marvel starts to get firing on all cylinders again, if they do, because there's no guarantee that they will, but I am telling you right now that once Marvel, if it happens, starts firing on all cylinders again, and they start consistently putting out movies of high quality time after time again, starting with Deadpool and Wolverine, you're going to see just how much comic book movie fatigue there is. Like, Deadpool and Wolverine is going to make money dependent on how good it is, but bare minimum, Deadpool and Wolverine is going to make $700 million. And if it's good, it's going to be $1 billion film. So we'll see. I just don't believe there is any quantifiable data that shows people are tired of cinematic universes. Now, I get tired of cinematic universes when that's the only thing they offer. That's why I love the fact that, like DC, for example, is doing cinematic universe, and they're doing Joker in its own thing, and they're doing Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves' The Batman as its own separate thing. I like that they mix it up. That's the key. It's not one or the other. It's both and. Have a good, thriving, healthy, high-quality cinematic universe, and have good, thriving, quality, high-quality, standalone individual things. That's the key. That's the key. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, CM. All right. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, man. I appreciate that. All right, next up, Wesley Cunningham writes, I'd have trouble seeing Last of Us Season 2 ending with that scene. It's the whole reason Ellie goes on her rampage in the game, and otherwise it would kind of change the whole point in my opinion. Not necessarily. Remember, Last of Us Season 1 changed up a lot of things from the game, right? There were a lot of narrative changes from the game. I mean, episode 3, which most people consider to probably be the best episode of the series, Episode 3 was not in the game at all. Like, there are some characters we have minor exposure to in the game, and they made a full-fledged story out of it. They made significant changes. I think there's a lot you can do with Last of Us Season 2, adding in and building up, like reestablishing the connection, the bond, the relationship between Joel and Ellie in Season 2, that when you end Season 2 on that scene, it has all the more dramatic impact. Like in Season 1, we saw them form that bond, right? The bond by the end of Season 1 is formed. Now we really need to see, I think, through Season 2, the depth of that bond. To the point that when that thing happens, we understand and feel the full devastation of it. And I believe there's a lot they can do between that, and then carry on with that next phase of the story that you're pointing out in Season 3. Because they've already said they're taking the game and breaking that into 2 separate seasons. And I think, again, I don't know. I'm just a fan speculating just like everybody else. I have exactly the same amount of chances of my theory being right as anybody else has a chance of being right. But that's why I think they're going to end that season with that. They're going to really build that thing up in the second season, have its own storyline and all that kind of stuff, then end there. That'll lead us into season 3. Again, just a theory. I could be totally wrong about it, and you could be totally right, but we'll see where it goes. All right. Thanks a lot for sharing that, man. Thanks, Wesley. Next up, Wesley also writes, meant to send before last weekend, but at this point, think we get Dustin/Connor 4 before either retires. No. I by the way, for those of you wondering, this is a UFC question. I don't think the UFC has any interest. I don't think Dustin Poirier has any interest in doing. Okay, look, I'll say this. If Conor McGregor loses, I don't think there's any big fight for him. Because here's the thing. So for those of you who don't know, at the end of this month, Conor McGregor makes his return and he's fighting a very bad man. He's a good guy, but I mean, in the ring, he is a very bad man by the name of Michael Chandler, who is a living, walking headhunter. He is a exciting, dynamic, very violent fighter. Now he's lost, I think, both to Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje, but both magnificent fights. And personally, I think he's going to literally remove Conor McGregor's head from his body. I think he's going to destroy Conor McGregor. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I hope we get a banger, big, entertaining fight. I really do. But I think Michael Chandler is putting Conor McGregor to night-night land. Like, night-night, bye-bye, sleepy time. Yeah, he's going to sleep. I think Conor McGregor's going to sleep. And if that fight is as one-sided as I suspect it's going to be, and again, I hope I'm wrong, then the problem is, how do you build up that fight? Like, Conor McGregor's been gone for years, and then he comes right back in and gets his head taken off. I don't know, there's a big payday. But here's the thing. If by some miracle Conor McGregor wins that fight, if Conor McGregor beats Michael Chandler, which I do not think will happen, but if it does, Dustin Poirier is not going to get another title shot. He's had too many. He's not going to get another title shot, but he is still one of the best fighters in the world. He's still one of the most popular fighters in the world. Dustin Poirier said he's already thinking about retiring. He could look, I mean, if in theory, he could look at a Conor McGregor 4th fight as one last giant payday, but it's only possible if Conor McGregor beats Michael Chandler. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to happen. And I don't think he will beat Michael Chandler. Again, I hope it's a big, interesting, entertaining fight. But yeah, I just don't see him beating Michael Chandler. All right, next up. Andy writes, "Hey, John, I saw 9 films that came out last month, and 5 of them were original films. Evil Does Not Exist. I saw The TV Glow, Babes, and Violent Nature. And that's the new who played Viggo Mortensen film, right? Yes, Viggo Mortensen. If next time I won't only update you or how many original films I saw this month, but also how many original films in the first half of the year." Is that a question? Next time I won't only update you on how many original films I saw this month, but also how many original films. Yeah. So what Andy, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, what I think Andy is referring to here is, you know, we often, this comes up a lot, like whenever the issue of people say, there's nothing original in Hollywood anymore. It's just all sequels and things. No, there's not. This is a statistical fact. It's not an opinion. It's a statistical fact. There is more original film being made today than in any other time in Hollywood history. It's just that you don't go out to see it. And when I say you, I include all of us as film fans. We just don't go out to support them enough. That's the thing. There's tons of original film out there. Tons of it. But our natural human, tendency is that we are more naturally attracted and pay attention to things we recognize and know. That's a natural human trait. Like if there's a new Harry Potter, well, I'm familiar with Harry Potter, so we pay a little bit more attention to that. So that's natural. But yes, the criticism that Hollywood doesn't make original film anymore. It's like, tell me you don't pay attention without actually saying you don't pay attention, because there's a lot of original film coming out. By the way, I can't remember the last time I said this, but man, I'm really excited for the new M. Night movie, Trap. I think, and who's the lead in it? Josh, I'm forgetting the name of the actor. Anyway, the new M. Night movie, Trap, which I got my first real look at when we were at CinemaCon. They showed us a few minutes of it at CinemaCon. Looks so good. Hartnett, thank you. That's who it is. Josh Hartnett, Patrick, Leonardo, King Daddy, MJV, throwing that in. Josh Hartnett. I honestly think this movie looks baller. I think it looks so good. And man, that scene in the trailer when Josh Hartnett is like, he's looking at the guy on the video phone and he goes from this dead serious look on his face to a bit of a smile. That's one of the creepiest images I've seen all year. Such a good image. And I can't remember the last time I said I'm super excited about this new M. Night movie. It's been a while, but I'm very excited for this film. Again, another big original film. Hope it's good. All right. Next up, we got Andy again, who writes, like with what John Schnepp did with The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, I would like a similar treatment for Ben Affleck's Batman film. Yeah. Did you know, I don't know if many of you know this. Some of you might remember this and know this, that prior to him passing away, John Schnepp was actually working on a What If docu-series where like every episode was going to be kind of a what if for a different Hollywood situation that happened over the years. For a little bit of a time, I was helping him with that project a little bit for a time. And it would have been great. It would have been great. Death of Superman Lives, What Happened is such a good documentary. And look, I know I'm obviously very biased because of my relationship with Schnepp, but it was great. If you have not seen John Schnepp's The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, you really should check it out. It's a lot of fun. But he was working on this series, and the Batman thing was obviously not a part of it yet, but there was a number of big Hollywood stories that we were working on and that we looked at. I was just involved with it early in the development of it for a very short time, but it was going to be great. I think it would have been great. And yeah, actually Alton Wang brings this up. Sometimes when people bring up pirating, I am very, very anti-piracy. Piracy is theft. I mean, people try to talk circles around it and everything, but at the end of the day, pirating something is theft. You're stealing. And the reason I often get kind of emotional about it is because I got to see firsthand what piracy did, because I can't remember the number, but it got into the hundreds of thousands of times that John Schnepp's movie got pirated. And like some totally clueless people would come up to Schnepp and say, man, I loved it. Like I downloaded it off of BitTorrent and yeah, I loved your movie, man. And not realizing that like the people who pirated Schnepp's movie nearly financially ruined him, because he put like everything. He maxed out he did all the classic things, right? He maxed out all his credit cards. He spent every last one of his dollars into making that movie. And then that nearly bankrupted him. And then like a ton of people just felt like it was cool to just take it. Oh, you made this thing. You poured your life into this thing. You spent all your money in this. Thanks. I'm just going to take it. Thank you. And I'm not stealing. Piracy's not stealing. Yes, it is. And you nearly ruined my friend's life. Anyway, so I get I feel a little personal about that sometimes when people bring up piracy. Robert Meyer Burnett does as well because of the Schnepp thing. We get we feel a little bit personal about it when people try to justify that piracy isn't stealing. And listen, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying somebody who gets caught pirating should go to jail for 20 years. I'm not saying that. I feel a little bit more of a connection to that because I literally saw piracy just about ruin one of my friends' lives. So that was hard. Anyway, next up, we've got Lazarus writes, "Hey, John, my brother and I just came back from Bad Boys and we loved it. The showtime was 2:15, but it didn't start until 2:40. They need to cut down the trailers, dude. Again, sometime in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to make a video just basically laying out the whole idea. Like I said, I just put up a poll earlier, 6,000 respondents. I just put up a poll this morning, over 6,000 respondents, and only 2% of those respondents said it's acceptable to start a movie 25 minutes or more after your advertised start time. 98% of the respondents said that's not acceptable. And as a movie theater industry, you're trying to get customers to come back to your theaters, but you insist on doing things that they say is unacceptable to do. I mean, I'm going to see if any movie, I'm going to be really impressed, considering I am a nobody, but I'm going to be really impressed to see if any of the movie theaters actually have a PR person reach out and say, yes, we'd like to respond to that. I'd be very, very curious to see if any of them will. I don't think they will because I don't matter and I'm a nobody, but I'm still going to be very curious to see if any of them do. All right, next up. Patrick Quill writes, "Thanks for the great audio. My ears, thank you." Is that we try to make good audio? I hope we have good audio. Thank you for that, Patrick, with the smiley face. Appreciate that. Dwayne Fernandez writes, "Hey, John, at the moment, do you have any insider info that you could tease? Or if not, what was the biggest piece of info you had told to you before?" I've got about 5 or 6 things that I will never say. I got 5 or 6 things that I will never say. So yeah, nothing that I'm not even going to tell you what projects they're connected to. Because for some reason, I talked about this a few weeks ago. I don't know why, but I get so many people that I don't know send me shit. Like, John, just wait. Now listen, I think a lot of the stuff that I get is fake, which is why I don't ever talk about 95% of the stuff that gets sent to me, because I think a lot of it is fake. I mean, and sometimes I'm wrong. There have been things sent to me that I just dismiss saying, that's fake. And then like 4 months later, find out that what was sent to me was actually real. That happens to me a lot too. But I consider about 95% of the stuff that gets sent to me fake. But people I have never talked to, whatever, John, I work at such and such studio and we have this image, and they'll send me an image, or we just saw so-and-so walk into so-and-so's office. So so-and-so and so-and-so are meeting. Just want you to know. Or John, just want to know I'm on the set of this and this guy was just here. Like, I get so many people send me this stuff. You would not believe, and almost every morning I'm talking to Jonathan and Ray about, here's what I got sent lately, but we never bring it up on the show. We don't talk about it. But I get sent lots of stuff, so much stuff, and I don't know why. But anyway, no, not scripts. Drew saying scripts? No. Well, no, that's not true. I do get some scripts sent to me. Not, first of all, yes, a lot of fans send me scripts saying, John, please read my script. And I'm like, I can't. Number one, if I ever want to make a movie sometime in the future, and then you say there's like a 2% similarity to a script you sent me, I could get in legal trouble. So no, because of that. But also no, if I read one person's script, then I got to start reading everybody's scripts. And it takes a long time to read scripts. So I do not read scripts that people send to me. Guys, thank you, but don't send me your scripts. But I also get people connected to studios sending me scripts for films that are either in production or not even in production yet. And I'd say a good half of the time, those are real. Like about half the time they're fake, but about half the time they end up being real. And it's not like I get 20 of them sent to me a year, but I'd say I get about 4 or 5 sent to me a year that some people get their hands on for some reason. They just decide to send it to me. I have no idea why. But I don't even spend time reading them because I have no idea if they're real or not. So yeah, it's a weird thing, which is part of the reason why I don't get involved in the scoop game. I have huge respect for people like Jeff Schneider and others in the industry who know how to work and play the scoop game properly. But I do not want to be in the scoop game. That's not my bag. I'm not good at it. And I don't ever want to be doing that kind of stuff, but a huge amount of respect for the people that do. All right. And I think that is it. So listen, we still got a few minutes here because I turned off the super chats. I'm going to take some questions you guys just have in the chat. So do me a favor. If you're in the chat and you have a question for me, do this. Look in the live chat right now. Do this. Format it with, in capital letters, question, colon, and then write a question. So that way I know you're actually asking me a question and not talking to other people in the chat. So if you've got a question right now, I'm not promising I'm going to answer everyone that gets sent in. I'm going to pick and choose a couple of them here. And yeah, let's spend a couple of times doing that. Let's see. Connor's writing a very important question to me. Will Italy win the Euros? Yes. Italy always wins because it's Italy. Italy always wins. Next. What's that? Question, what's going on with Sony Paramount Skydance? So right now, the way it is right now, Skydance put in an offer that the mergers committee at Paramount recommended and said, yes, this is a good offer from Skydance. But the number one controlling owner, Sherry Redstone, from what I understand, may not like the deal. And she ultimately has the power to kill it. So that's kind of where we're sitting right now. We're just kind of sitting there right now and finding out what's going to be happening. All right. Adam writes, do you think Mufasa is going to be successful at the box office? Yes. Do I think it's going to be $1 billion film? No, because it's not The Lion King, right? The CGI Lion King that came out made over $1 billion, but this is now a prequel. It's been a number of years. So it's going to be successful. Yes, I have no doubt that it's going to be successful, but I do not believe it's going to be $1 billion film, but I think it'll be successful. Watson writes, did you see that Andrew Stanton is directing Toy Story 5? I did not. That's great news. He directed WALL-E and Finding Nemo. Andrew Stanton is great. I've had a chance a couple of times to sit down and talk to him. He is wonderful. He also directed John Carter, which I think is a really good movie, but totally botched their marketing. But I'm excited that Andrew Stanton's going to be directing that. Thanks for sharing that, Watson. I didn't hear that yet. Let's see. Daniel writes, is streaming really sustainable for both the studios and customers? Yeah, listen, streaming is not even a real thing. Streaming is just a methodology. Streaming is no different than VHS or DVD. It's just a more convenient. Streaming is just the next iteration of home video. That's all it is. Streaming is just the next iteration of home video. A more convenient one with some more capabilities. But yeah, home video is always sustainable, and streaming in and of itself, as long as you use it properly, is sustainable. So yes, it absolutely can be. Okay, let's see what's next. MJV writes, question, was the Alien Romulus trailer you saw at CinemaCon the same as the trailer we saw last week? Yes. Now, they also showed us just a couple of minutes, not like 20 minutes. It's just a couple of quick minutes of other footage as well. But yes, that is the trailer they dropped is the trailer that I'm pretty sure is exactly the trailer that they showed us there. All right. Let's see. Chainsaw Max writes, what character are you looking forward to seeing the most in The Boys Season 4? Starts in less than a week. I'm so excited for The Boys coming back. Listen, I know he's the antagonist and the villain of the show, and I love so many of the characters, but it's Homelander. I mean, Homelander is a twisted, flawed character, but it's really fascinating seeing the way they've been evolving them and kind of having an idea about where that character is going. I love to hate him. Homelander's the worst, but he's a fascinating character to see. So I'm really, really curious to see how they're going to continue to evolve Homelander in that way. All right. Connor writes, what's your favorite Sir Anthony Hopkins role? Ooh, he's from the same town as you. I love Anthony Hopkins. He gave me the biggest hug. He's the coolest guy. I love Anthony Hopkins. God. I mean, I know it's the stereotypical thing to say, but Silence of the Lambs. I know that's the answer 7 out of 10 people would say too, but it's true. I think that is my favorite movie of his. He's had a number of like absolutely magnificent ones. He also did Shadowlands, by the way. I want to look up, forgetting who was his co-star in that. But Shadowlands, it was a movie that came out in the early 90s, 1993. And he plays C.S. Lewis, the guy who wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He plays C.S. Lewis, and I think that was Deborah Winger in there with him. Yeah, Deborah Winger, and I don't remember who else was in that, but Deborah Winger was his main love interest in that as well. Shadowlands is wonderful. Shadowlands is so good. Like, I'm a C.S. Lewis fan, so that's part of it as well. So, yeah, there's that. But yeah, Shadowlands is great, but I'd still got to say Silence of the Lambs. Let's see. Daniel writes, question, do you have any thoughts on Christian Harloff moving to New York? You know what? I feel bad. I've only had a chance to text back and forth with Christian since he made the decision to move back to New York. We tried to set up lunch, but I can't do lunch because I do my show from 11:30 until about 1:30, so I can't go and do lunch. So I don't think I'm going to get a chance to see him before he actually packs up and goes, if he hasn't actually already done that. But we've been texting back and forth. I get it. I, at some point, plan on moving home too. Like, New York is home for Christian. And so I understand, uprooting and going back there. And because I feel that draw too. I feel drawn home. And at some point, I'm going to go home too. So yeah, I totally get it. Let's see. Where are we at here? Antonis writes, do you think we'll ever get to see Arnold Schwarzenegger back as Dutch in the Predator franchise? No. Look, Arnold Schwarzenegger is immortal, okay? His place and legacy in Hollywood history is 100% set and secure. He's an all-time GOAT. But nobody's lining up to go see him in movies today. I mean that's just a reality, right? He even put out a movie. I'm always forgetting the name of it. A bunch of years ago, like after he was done being governor of California, he did that movie where he was a sheriff in a small town and there was a criminal coming through in a super fast car. Johnny Knoxville was in it. Do you guys remember the name of the movie? The Last Stand. Raymond Verrata saying, right? The Last Stand. You know what? That's a good movie. The Last Stand. Let me see if I can look it up here. The Last Stand, not X-Men The Last Stand, but The Last Stand at the box office. Yeah, it's the Arnold Schwarzenegger one. Came out in 2013, so 11 years ago. Grand total at the box office. Grand total made $48 million. And it's a good movie. It's a good movie. I liked it. But the reality and the unfortunate part is that nobody's lining up to buy movie tickets to go see Arnold Schwarzenegger in movies today. I mean, could he do a cameo as Dutch in a Predator movie? Yes, but you're never going to see, I don't think we're ever going to see Arnold Schwarzenegger as a prominent character. Like, people aren't even going to see the Terminator movies anymore. So that's my guess. And again, I do not say that as any kind of disparaging remark on Arnold. He's an all-time GOAT. Hall of Famer, one of the greatest movie stars of all time, whose legacy is completely secure. But the patterns and the behaviors of the current movie-going audience is not to go see Arnold Schwarzenegger in movies. So there's that. All right. I'm going to take one last one. Let's see. What else can we address here? Last one, we'll do this. This is from Mike, who writes, If Twisters is a big hit, and I think it will be actually, like not $1 billion film or anything, but I think it's going to be a big hit. Do you think we'll get more sequels / remakes to more 90s movie franchises like Independence Day, Men in Black, Speed, etc.? Well, they already did another one to Independence Day, and that didn't work out. And then they did another one already to Men in Black with Chris Hemsworth. Did not work out. Listen, if Twisters is a big hit, it's not going to be because it was a 90s remake. If it's going to be a big hit, it's going to be a big hit because it's a fun-looking movie. The trailers are really good. Do you notice that they're not tying this to the original Twisters in any way, to the original Twister in any way, shape, or form? Like it's being treated like it's an original standalone movie. And I think that's really their approach to it. So if Twisters is a big hit, it is zero to do with the fact that I don't think any studio or marketing company is going to think, oh, it's a hit because it's a 90s thing. No. Like we saw, Independence Day tried relaunching, big dud. Men in Black tried relaunching, big dud. So if Twisters is a hit, and I think it will be, I don't think it's going to cause some kind of magical resurgence of 90s remakes at the same time. Anyway, and guys, that'll do it. That'll be 90 minutes. That'll do it for today's installment of Open Mic. Thank you so much for being here and making this little video part of your day. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in questions. Number one, because you gave us fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel as you did it. And everybody involved with the John Campea YouTube channel, thanks you guys so much for your support. I think we'll probably do another open mic tomorrow. I think we're going to have time tomorrow. Probably do another open mic, so keep your eyes open for that. Anyway, guys, that'll do it for me for now. Have a wonderful weekend. Go Oilers, go. We'll talk to you guys next time. And until then, bye-bye.